Greetings, Michael Kitces. What's happening?
David Carl Richards the third,
David,
DCR3,
that's exactly right.
DCR3.
That's exactly right. I did you see that on Twitter? Somebody said, take that, Michael Ernest Kitces.
Yes,
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, podcast listener, for
Yeah.
following our names. Now I got to start. We got to get you DCR3 as a Twitter handle here as
I
well.
know.
Like, depending on where you put like the hyphen, this is like a Star Wars ID as well.
Yeah,
So
super good.
DCR3,
Super good.
like.
Super good. Listen, I've had this repeated conversation over the years, particularly the last 5 years, with people who've built firms. They've grown.
Okay.
They've hired a bunch of advisors. They started thinking more like an entrepreneur, which, like, classically, the definition would be you want to make yourself irrelevant. Like they
spend more time working on the business. Don't spend so much time working in the business. All of that.
Yeah, and right, if you do it right. In fact, I said this to the team a year or two ago. I said, I want you to build a business and sort of pretend like I'm dead. It was just a joke. It's just a joke. But, like, if I was gone, would the business still exist? Mm-hmm. And we see, I've had repeated conversations over the year. I can think of a number of very specific ones, and one really recent, where people in their, and this is like, age doesn't really matter, but it's like long enough that they've built this firm. So it's the ones I'm thinking of between 45 and 55 years old, 40 and 50. Let's put it 40 and 50.
Okay.
The firm's big enough. There's actually tension now between them continuing to do client-facing work and running the business.
Interesting. So a little bit, I guess, a little bit similar to what we talked about last episode with Stuart moving, like, letting go of his clients and moving out of client-facing work, but like not because the advisor wants to go like do something else different, just like, this business is getting so big, I actually need to do more businessy things. Maybe I need to be letting go of some or more or all of my clients so I can just manage and run and grow and scale the business. Like,
what I'm super curious about is just that. Yeah, what I'm super curious about is that tension, because someone needs to run the business. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's been the person we're talking to right now, and we'll just call this person Jill. Jill has built this business. There's, let's just say, 6 to 10 people, 6 to 20 people, right, working there. Jill still has clients and is the CEO of the business and is starting to feel that tension. And there's two ways she could go. Like, you could hire a professional CEO, and that would be an interesting conversation to talk about. But what I'd like to talk about more is, let's say Jill has decided she is the right person to run the business. Like, she's the right person to be the CEO. She's been the CEO. She's the right person to continue to be the CEO. Again, a whole discussion there. But what I'm super curious about is this tension. And I've heard this a bunch. Here's the quote from somebody recently, actually. I'm only in my 40s, and I'm really struggling with the idea of giving up client-facing work, because who does that, right? In air quotes, like, in their 40s, who does that? Like, we've painted our whole identities is around, like we talked a little bit about with Stuart yesterday. Our whole identity is like, we got the clients, we brought the clients in, we serviced the clients. Yeah. And now there's tension. Somebody needs to run the business. We think we're the best person for it. We've historically been doing it. We actually kind of want to do it. Yeah. Jill wants to take on this challenge. She's struggling with letting go of client-facing activities. How do we talk about that?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head out of the gate. That, like, look, there's a whole, like, the tactics of how do you transition the clients and wind them down and compensate your staff. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff there, but there's a lot of industry stuff out there on how to do that. The crux of it, and the problem I see crop up most often with advisors that are doing this transition, and it's versions of what you just articulated from Jill. Like, it's not a tactics thing. It's an identity. It's an identity thing. Right. It's a, like, what am I if I don't have clients, having built my career as a financial advisor who has clients? Like, what is that identity? It rings particularly true for me because many years ago, FPA Retreat had this tradition that they did at the beginning of every conference where it was called circle gathering. So everybody who was attending the conference, which back then they would get like 300 to 400 people, would sit in one giant room of just like, picture like concentric circles of chairs, because you need like a bunch of layers of circles just to fit like 300 people in circles like an onion.
Right.
And then we would take a microphone and pass it around the room, and every person would stand up and say like, hi, my name is, I'm from, and the reason I'm here at retreat is I'm thinking a lot about blank. And you would talk about like, what's the thing on your mind? What's the issue you're tackling? What's the thing you're weighing? And it was hugely powerful as just literally like a way to kick off what was really like a very intimate conference with some like super smart, amazing, really experienced advisors. Was you would hear someone across the room be like, I'm trying to navigate this moment because my son has come into the business and I'm not sure how to make him my partner and not my son anymore, because we're trying to navigate family business dynamics. Like, if anybody else in the room has dealt with bringing their child into the business and like transitioning them from a parent-child relationship to a full-fledged business partner, like, I want to talk to you. So like, people would put their issues like that out there, and then you'd have all these amazing conversations at the conference because you find the other people that had their issue. And so I remember this because I remember getting to the point in my career where I'd been doing all of this client-facing work, but I was starting to do more speaking, more writing, more of that end. And that was what was capturing my interest more so than client work, and was starting to try to envision like, what does my future look like as a professional if I let go of client relationships? And I literally went to that circle gathering for actually like a few years in a row, because it literally took me years to like process the identity challenge. And the question I'd asked in that circle for years was, what does it mean to be a great financial advisor if you don't manage client relationships?
Right.
Which is so like, what does it mean to be a great doctor if you don't see patients?
Yeah.
Because we have that, like, there are doctors that do research. There are doctors that like administer and lead medical organizations, but they don't necessarily do patient work. We do still call them doctor, but they don't take patients. And so to me, there's, at least this was my way of processing it at the time, like, does that exist for us? Like, if Jill stops taking clients and becomes the CEO of her advisory business, is Jill still a financial advisor? Do you still call her? Because if the doctor becomes the CEO of the drug company, we do still call him or her doctor. Now, granted, there's also like a medical degree and a license and some other stuff that goes with that. So not the perfect analogy, but I think it gets at the heart of the same thing of like, do you have to let go of this identity that you're a financial advisor if you're not going to keep client relationships because you're doing something else that serves and grows the business? So I've got some other thoughts, but like, I want to start there and just your I'm really curious for your reactions to that kind of identity transition, this idea of like, can you still be a financial advisor? I'm like putting that in quotes as though video watchers can see it, audio watchers can't. Million but like, can you still be a financial advisor when you're not taking clients anymore?
That's a great story. Yeah, I remember I missed those retreats. I have a similar story. I can't really.
Retreat does still exist. Unfortunately, they don't do circle gathering anymore. But like, it is still a conference. Check it out.
Yes.
FPA, whatever the URL is .com.
Yeah. I can't relate to Jill and the other, maybe 10 people who've asked this almost exact same question of me, from the perspective of running a big business, because I never did that. But I can totally relate to the identity piece for the same reason you did. I remember when I got an offer to somebody, as it happened, 3 different people wanted to buy my advisory firm kind of at the same time. And I had told everybody, no, 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 no. And in fact, somebody we both know well was like, Carl, my mom taught me never to turn down an offer I hadn't seen. I was like, well, first of all, that's great advice. Second of all, your mom did not say that. But maybe but so
But did you at least look at the offer? Or you
so this is the point. I went home and I told my wife, Corey, I was like, I don't know what to do here. Like this other thing.
So did Corey want you to look at the offer?
Yeah. Corey, I told her that, like, this other thing. So in Jill's case, the other thing is running that business. In our cases, the other thing was it was like sort of transitioning out, doing a slightly adjacent business. I remember Corey said to me, hey, security, your client business is a security blanket. Maybe for you right now, it's become an anchor instead of a security blanket. And I remember, and then we did look at the offer, and we actually ended up going with the firm of that person. But the idea of like, what am I, seems to be at the heart of this, because in almost every conversation I've had with people, and I could mention names specifically right now, that are making this same decision as Jill, like, I'm going to run the business now instead of client relationships. It comes down to like, wait, are the clients going to be okay? Yes. Everything's in place. It's my own firm. Like, I'm not all the clients.
You hired these people and trained them. So hopefully you're confident that they will serve your clients well. If you're not, then you have a different problem that you
different problem. But there is always this like, yeah, but there's like these 3 that like they've been with me from the beginning. I think it's all pointing the same thing. And I remember what John Bowen said to me when I was literally wrestling with this over a course of years, like you. John said to me, he said, the greatest disappointment of your professional life is going to be when you sell your business and nobody cries but you. And because I was like, the clients are all going to cry, they're going to be so sad. And I think that's very similar. Like, I think we hold on to that so tightly, and especially in this case where it's within the firm, chances are the people that are going to be servicing the clients have already met with the clients. Like if they haven't, you've got time to make that happen. So it really, to me, it really does come down to an identity thing. And especially in this latest question, because I'm just reading this right off of a text, this idea of, it's in quotes, because I'm only 40 something, and who does that?
Right.
That's the fascinating piece to me. We're so linked up with that identity, that's who we are. And especially those of us who've been around 10, 15, 20 years, it used to be, remember that? Like, if you weren't actively bringing in, what did they used to call us? If you were actively bringing in clients, they had a name for that.
Producer.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly right. Like, if you weren't even the name, right? If you weren't a producer, that implies like you're the only productive person in the whole place. If you were around back then and now you're having this question, you're 45 and you're saying, hey, of course, you're like, I'm going to go from a productive role to one of those people I used to make fun of that are just bloat in the business, right? And none of that's true. It's so to me, that's you're right. There's a million places you can learn the skills of how to do that, the tactical piece of how to do that.
Yeah, the blocking point's not the tactical piece. It's the identity piece. And I mean, to me, at the end of the day, I find, usually what that comes down to for almost any of us when we're going through some kind of identity transition, like, you don't get through it until you get clarity on the identity you want on the other side, that you're comfortable with and feel good about and can embrace. Whatever that is, whatever that looks like. Either you redefine it, like, as long as I still got my medical degree, I'm still a doctor, even if I'm not seeing patients anymore. It's still Dr. So-and-so. Or like, I have accepted that I am still a financial advisor, even though I don't serve clients anymore, because I did the work and I have the experience and I have the degree, and look, like, I can still do my advisor thing if I meet a person on the street who's got money problems. I just happen to not do that much in practice. But like you reconcile. I can still be a financial advisor who now spends my time doing other things in the same way like the doctor can still be a doctor, even though they do non-patient things. I see some that go that route. And I see others that just get comfortable with what the other version looks like. Like Jill, you mean advisory firm CEO. You're CEO of Jill's Planning or whatever she calls her firm. Like, you're the CEO of Jill's Planning that has
you're already
many hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of clients and dozens of employees. And like, that's a big deal. That's a big thing. Like, be proud of that. Be excited about that. Embrace that. Like, that's a great thing. You can build your identity around it. It's different. Say like, I'm the CEO of Jill Financial Planning. I'm not Jill, the financial advisor.
Let me ask you a question, Michael, because I'm super curious about your journey. Because look, there's two ways. I have found there's two ways to get this done. One is like, if I'm being pulled to the direction of being a runner, I can visualize myself as a runner and get comfortable with that idea and go through that process, or I can start running. And then what happens is as I run, I become a runner. And then once I become a runner, I go running because that's what runners do. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a giant circular problem, chicken and egg problem. But there's another piece here that I'm super curious if you dealt with it. It's the who does that? Because no matter what tactic you take, there's gonna be some imposter syndrome piece playing into it. There's gonna be the like, wait.
Oh yeah.
Like, so how did you deal with that? How did you deal with that? Jill sent
you her thing in her, I'm in my 40s. Who does that? I mean, like I did that crossroads in my 30s, and I got even more of like,
you just got slow.
What are you doing?
Was it like exposure?
Like, why are you walking away from that opportunity you've got at your firm to be moving up? So I made that transition. So I made that transition in my 30s, but I will say, and it reminds me of the conversation with clients when they're transitioning into retirement, that there's like, there's two types of retirement transitions. There's people who are retiring from something, and there are people who are retiring to something. Smart. And by and large, I find like the people who are retiring to something tend to do that transition a little better. The ones who are retiring from something struggle for a version of the same thing. They retire from the thing, but they don't know what they're retiring to. And then they end up in an identity crisis because they start severing what they were. I don't do that job anymore. I don't do that thing. I don't have those relationships. I don't show up at that place. And I don't know what I do or what I am now, or like, I don't know what my purpose is, right? I mean, I've seen some clients just get very lost of like, I don't even know what my purpose is when they get like 6-12 months into retirement and they've completely separated from the old thing and they don't know what their new thing is. And so for better or worse, like that part of the transition went okay for me, at least just for my journey, because I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do so badly that I was leaving a hell of an opportunity at an advisory firm. So just like, I've got this thing in me that I need to do something that has more bigger reach and impact than what I'm doing in our advisory firm for our several hundred fairly affluent clients that we were making a little more affluent at the time. Like, it was a great job and wonderfully remunerative and a great career opportunity. But for me, I was just I feel like I was put on this earth for a different purpose. There's something else in me that I need to do and get out and own and be. Right. And it was just bottling up inside of me too much. I was like, I just have to do it. So like that was what drove me through it. But it was still ultimately I could do it because I knew what I wanted to do. And even then, I will say, I just like, live real time therapy session reflecting back. Like, it was still a long time before I reconciled all of the identity pieces. I did the thing because I felt so driven to do the thing. I couldn't not do the thing, sort of identity of it be darned. And then for a long time, it's just like, yeah, I'm Michael. I write a blog on the internet.
How did that, listen, I really need to understand something. When you like go back there for just a second, like sit down on the blue couch for a minute, like what, like, tell us a story about that. Like what it felt like, or who you told. Can you remember one of those moments?
Yeah, it really was effectively a version of that. Like, I dialed down the advisory firm work and started dialing up our platform. And for a while, I was like, I teach and train financial advisors was a version of it for a while. And I actually said teach and train without any particular definition as to what the difference was between teaching and training, to do both. But like, it felt more robust to say two things and not one. I think there was a piece that, frankly, I guess if I really look back in retrospect, that probably didn't hit until I was more into my 40s and like 20 years into my career, that I could get back to, that I could really just get back to, like, I'm Michael, I published a blog for financial advisors on the internet. And like, if you're going to make whatever judgy things that some people make when you say, like, I write a blog, I'm like, I don't really care. I don't have anything to prove to you at this point. Like, I know the people that I help, and I feel pretty good about what I do when I wake up in the morning. And like, I don't really care what you think about it. And I'm not here to prove anything. And like, that was easy to say like 20 years into my career, as we've, discussed in episodes in the past. I mean, I think a lot of us, like, we fight a lot of that credibility challenge earlier in our careers. And then eventually there comes a point on the other end where we feel like we've got a little less to prove, and that dynamic changes for us in our careers. But that takes a long time to get there. Or early on, I still felt like I had to have something to explain what it was and what I did, and how to explain that identity, right? It just, like, it's a thing, I guess more so in the US maybe than some other countries, as I'm told from some of my friends who live internationally. Like, this whole, you're defined by your career and job and what you do, that's a very US thing. Yes, like, yes. Most other countries don't do it. You don't meet people and introduce yourself by your job title. Yes. We do that here in the US a lot, though. And particularly here in the DC area, everybody's like, oh, where are you from and what do you do? Because no one's actually from DC. You're here for government or politics or lobbying or whatever it is. And then they want to know what you do because they're trying to figure out if you're on the other side of the political aisle. So it's particularly hard ingrained here in the DC area. But that whole phenomenon of my identity is defined by what I do, I think is very ingrained in us. Yeah. And so again, when you get to scenarios like Jill, like, what does it mean when you're not a financial, not a financial advisor because you're leading the firm, but you're not taking clients? Or like, are you allowed to still call yourself a financial advisor when you're not leading a firm and taking clients anymore? I mean, how have you handled this? You did a version of this.
I haven't handled it. I still deal with it all the time. I think 2 days ago I went home, was like, I don't know, what am I? Like, what am I? I'm like a guy who talks about things on the internet. Like,
you're also a guy who
I used to have
things with a Sharpie. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. I draw things with a Sharpie. Like, that helps a lot. Thank you. I feel much better. So, it's funny, lately it's been really helpful when people have asked me what I do. I explained to them, like, if this was 20 years ago, if this was 30 years ago, I would have simply told you I was an author. Because the book was the way you packaged an idea and shared it. That's all I do now, is I package ideas and share them. They just don't always end up in books. Now, sometimes they're podcasts or they're other forms of knowledge products, creative and interesting, workshops, whatever. But I think the point is, what I love about what I think you've uncovered, which I think is really helpful to Jill and all the other people who've asked this question, is I really think that for me, the takeaway from this conversation is the idea that you're moving to something. And you actually, in this case, they all know what it is, right? So and to be honest, the thing you're moving to is actually has a little bit more clarity. And prestige is not the right word. I don't mean that at all. It's just like, there is no, it's not hard. This isn't an external struggle, I think, to say, what do you do? Instead of saying I'm a financial advisor, to say I'm the CEO of a financial firm. I don't think that's an external problem anymore. Like, that has every bit.
Yeah, like you should do okay in social circles in most worlds,
whatever that means.
That introduction.
Yeah, whatever that means, which I don't love. But the point is, it's not going to cause you problems. But I love the idea of, like, okay, well, what if you focused on where you're going to? You've got a thing that you're becoming. In Jill's case, she already is it. and she's just going to be more of it. And you can structure this any way you want. And I've had like long, almost like coaching conversations with people about this, where it's been like, you know, cold turkey, like I'm just going to do this. And I've had other people who've taken literally 24 months. I'm going to get rid of 3 clients a month for 24 months, and then I'm going to be done. Like you can structure that any way you want, but you've got a clear direction. You've got a clear location you're headed to. And I think that's really beautiful and helpful.
Yeah. So think about what the new thing's going to be, and it gets easier to let go of the old one.
Totally. I think we could leave it there, my friend. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it.
Cheers.